Hey everyone, I'm Danny Jack and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about how to steal like an artist. So whether you're a photographer or an artist, if you're anything like me, you probably look at those who have walked the path before you and you're always wondering, like, how do they get their ideas? How do they become so original? This is something in my photography work I worry about all the time. I would always ask myself, how do I become an original creative? How do I create something that has never been seen before? And it would often be quite paralyzing. It would often make me think, if I can't be original, if I can't create something new, then what's the point? Recently, however, I came across the book Steal Like an Artist by Austin Kleon. You may know Austin Kleon as the guy who writes Show Your Work, which I think is there on the bookshelf. Great writer, great artist, and he just is full of amazing ideas. And Steal Like an Artist is a brilliant book. As you can see, it's incredibly small, it's incredibly quick to read. It's one of those books you can pick up at any point. You can keep it on your desk, and whenever you need some inspiration, you can open up a random page and there's some juicy stuff in here. So what does Austin Kleon mean when he talks about stealing like an artist? One of the things he talks about in the book is how nothing really in the creative world is original. Everything is kind of like a remix or a mashup of creative things that have come before it. As artists have kind of worked through time, everyone has influenced each other until you end up with what you see today, which looks original, but actually it's just a combination of lots and lots of influences over time. Now, before you jump down my throat and, start saying things like, oh, what about David Bowie and what about Salvador Dali and these people who are clearly completely original, let me kind of try to explain it a little bit more. So let's say you have, an incredible musician, right? So let's say Bowie, for example, and his work sounds completely unique and like something you've never heard before. However, even like David Bowie's work is music which he normally makes using like the same set of notes everyone else uses, with the same scales that we've heard in songs before. He'll take his influences from music he loves and put them together to create something completely new. Another way to think about it is in our own human genealogy. We are a remix or a mashup of our two parents. Genetically speaking, they have their own DNA, and we are kind of like a combination of that. And yes, we are original, but we are original because we are a combination of different things which came before us. So one bit in the book Austin Kleon talks about, which I really like, is the genealogy of ideas. And I guess this kind of draws back to the idea of a genealogy of our parents as being a combination of the two. You can kind of think of your ideas being the same thing. We collect things throughout our life, whether we choose to or not. We collect perspectives and influences, both in our creative world and our personal life, and everything. Everything is a combination of the stuff we consume. So the genealogy of ideas is something I think is really cool. And once you can become more conscious of that concept, and once you know that's what you're doing, I think you can start to make steps to selectively choose more like an artist as opposed to a hoarder. For example, let's say you want to start a band or you want to start making music, you could make the conscious effort to start consuming maybe your 10 favourite artists who you want to inspire what your music wants to sound like. You can start listening to that more. Or if you want to become, say, a wedding photographer, you could look at maybe 10 photographers whose work you absolutely love and, start to consume that content more often so that you can, take little bits and bobs from their work and combine it into something that is yours. So when I say there's nothing original in the world of art, that could sound quite negative, right? I don't mean for it to come across that way. I actually see it as quite a positive thing. I think that the idea that there isn't anything original, and actually artists are just collectors of influence and lovers of art which came before that, they took those things and they took the things which kind of, nitpicked different ideas from different artists to create something original that comes from something before it. So I guess that's a bit in the book I really resonated with, was that, okay, so there's nothing technically original out there, but the way you choose to kind of selectively choose inspiration from different artists and different creatives and just different things in your life, that combination is completely original. All your influences, everything that's happened to you over your life, those set of circumstances and the art you choose to consume and to learn from and to steal from is what makes your work completely original, because no one has combined it in that way before. When I think of my own photography, for example, it's not just an idea. I didn't just suddenly start shooting the way I shoot, and I didn't just develop this idea and this style out of nowhere. It came from years and years of influences that sort of changed the way I shoot, changed the photography I love, and I like to reflect that in my own work. Quite subconsciously. This is not a conscious thing of being like, I'm going to shoot like this person and this person combined. There are hundreds of photographers and hundreds of artists, and just also my own personality traits that kind of influence the way I shoot, that alone are unoriginal, but combined make something totally new. Now, before I go on to how to steal like an artist, I think a few people might be watching this and thinking, this just sounds like plagiarism, this sounds like copying, you shouldn't be stealing from other people, you should try and be coming up with things your own. And you are totally right. Like, plagiarism is a very bad thing in the creative industry, and you shouldn't try and make work to look like other people. What I'm saying is stealing ideas from other people in a learning sense. The idea is to look at work you love and you appreciate and not try to rip it off and pass it as your own and get credit for it, but to kind of study it and absorb it and try and like pick things you like from it and incorporate it into your own style. You're not trying to, say for photography, for example, you're not trying to replicate someone else's photo so that you can put that photo in your portfolio. Definitely don't do that. That is not cool. What I'm trying to say is that you can, look at how someone maybe shot something a certain way, and then use that in your own work and try and, deconstruct it so that, you can learn from it and you can maybe see like, how did that person take that photo? And once you do this over time, once you look at work you love and, you incorporate different things from it and you deconstruct those photographs, eventually you'll have this huge arsenal that subconsciously becomes your style. One phrase he says in the book, which I quite like, is imitation is not flattery, transformation is flattery. Taking someone's work and turning it into something that is uniquely yours, but using them as an influence, I think is something that other photographers, I think, would love to hear is being done with their own photographs. So how do you steal like an artist? There's one point in the book where he says about the difference between a hoarder and a collector. And he talks about the fact that a hoarder kind of collects things indiscriminately. They don't really like credit, they don't really care where they get influence from, they're just trying to take as much stuff as possible. However, a collector is pretty selective in how they choose to collect things. So an artist who is a collector will look at other people's work and think like, how can this improve my own work? What can I take from this? And be very selective. And how can this benefit me? How can I incorporate this into my own, utility belt, as it were? I also think it's important to kind of not think of copying as a dirty word and remember that it's actually part of the learning process. Think about when you're a child and you are learning, say, the alphabet. You don't make that up on the spot. You learn the alphabet by copying, writing it down as someone else has done, and you just copy it over and over again until you figure out the way of doing it. So one tip I would advise for photographers in particular is to kind of make a conscious effort to collect work selectively around you. Not in a way you're trying to rip anyone's work off, but in a way where you can collect it as sort of a constant stream of inspiration. So the other reason I like the idea of stealing like an artist is that it makes you feel a little bit better about the photographers and the creatives you look up to, when you see their ideas of being, completely original and, as amazing and as talented as they are. I think it's quite refreshing to remember that they also were influenced by people who came before them, and those photographers who came before them were influenced by those who came before them. So yeah, it just keeps going, and I think that's really nice. And the idea that, you can be a part of that chain, I think is something really cool. So how does this work in practice? One of the things I do to kind of become more of a collector in my creativity is I create a little steal file on my Instagram account. And I'm sure you've seen this before on Instagram. You can save pictures using the bookmark tool on the right hand side. And what I do is basically, as I'm going through Instagram, like I will kind of like when I'm inspired by something, or when I see something was like, oh, I want to kind of figure out how they did that, or I want to try something like this on a wedding day with my own couples or during an engagement shoot or whatever, I will essentially save a picture and keep it here in this steal file for me to have a look at, maybe just before a wedding, maybe just to get some inspiration, to try something new. And that's kind of how I use that. And I find that also it helps me to basically be a bit more active in the way I use Instagram, instead of just kind of, scrolling unintentionally. I can use it actually as an inspiration gathering tool. The other way to kind of steal like an artist, I guess, is to surround yourself by people who inspire you and motivate you, and, in a non-sleazy or spammy type of way, you will slowly start to pick up influences from them. How if they say like the 5 people you hang out most commonly with, you're a combination of those 5 people. I guess the same thing works in creativity as well. Hanging out with people whose work you love, that will eventually brush off on your style a little bit as well. Of course, you can pay to go on things like workshops as well, and that way you can steal ideas to put into your own Arsenal again. But I guess I know I've already said this again, but like just making sure that you are not stealing ideas. I think that it's no good as a creative, and it's no fun to be like a second-rate version of another photographer. But if you can steal from, say, 50 photographers and make something that is uniquely yours by, using little bits you've picked which you like and resonate from other photographers, then that way you can create a unique style. So that's it for me. That is my take on how to steal like an artist, how I think about creativity as not necessarily original, but a way for us to collect the work we love and combine it into something that is uniquely ours. If you have any comments or questions about any of that, or if you disagree with anything I've said and you think that things are original, then please feel free to leave it in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Press subscribe, press like, do all that jazz. I will see you on the next one.